why did thouest writeth that it liketh that it? Hey guys, welcome back. Today is Wednesday, which means we're in the book Anxious for Nothing by John MacArthur. And today we are going to be starting the topic humility towards God, and it is in chapter 3, casting your cares on God. We split it into sections because the chapters are quite long.
Yeah. So if you guys haven't been with us for any of these, I would recommend you go back and watch the intro. Go watch all of it. Chapter 1,
Just go watch our videos.
Just go watch all of our videos, okay? No, seriously though, if you are interested in this book, I'm not just trying to plug our videos. Seriously, you probably want to go watch the previous chapters because they lead up to where we're at now. However, that's not to say that you won't get something out of going ahead and listening to this video and reading along with us as we go through this one. We're starting with humility towards God, and I'm going to read for a little bit, and then Mariah's going to read for a little bit, and then we will probably give you our thoughts on it.
Without further ado, let's get started.
To support his exhortation to clothe ourselves in humility toward one another. Okay, so the beginning part of this chapter was talking about how in order to be able to fully cast your cares on God and get rid of your anxiety, we must start with a humble heart. And so he's just going into more details about humility. To support his exhortation to clothe ourselves in humility towards one another, Peter gave this citation from the Old Testament. God is opposed to the proud, but gives grace to the humble. And that's in 1 Peter 5:5. That verse provides keen motivation for displaying humility. We will be blessed if we are humble and chastised if we're not. As we will soon see, one of those blessings is the ability to deal with anxiety. First, however, let's explore why God is opposed to the proud. Very simply, he hates pride. According to Proverbs 6:16, there are 6 things which the Lord hates. Yes, 7 which are an abomination to him. What is the first on the list? Haughty eyes, and that's in verse 17. A visual depiction of pride. A few chapters later, wisdom personified declares, the fear of the Lord is to hate evil, pride and arrogance and the evil way, and the perverted mouth I hate, and that's 8:13. God has a strong reason for hating pride so much. It is the sin that led to the fall of humanity, and it was the fatal flaw of the tempter who brought about such destruction. Pride is what prompted Lucifer to say in his heart, I will ascend to heaven, I will raise my throne above the stars of God, and I will sit on the mount of assembly. In the recesses of the north, I will ascend above the height of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. And that's Isaiah 4:13-14. God's grace is reserved for the humble. For thus says the high and exalted one who lives forever, whose name is holy. I dwell on a high and holy place, and also with the contrite and lowly of spirit, in order to revive the spirit of the lowly, and to revive the heart of the contrite. That's 57:15.
And this is why there's commentaries and Bibles.
God lives in an exalted place. Who lives with him there? Not the high and the mighty, but the lowly. God concluded his message to Isaiah by saying, to this one I will look, to him who is humble and contrite of spirit, and who trembles at my word. And that's 66:2. He blesses the humble, but he opposes the proud. I mourn to see people stumbling around trying to fix their lives, to find some kind of solution, some kind of book or therapy that will solve their problems, but who find no deliverance. Instead of experiencing the grace of God, they experience the correcting hand of God because they are proud. That's a good one. Peter's advice is, humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you at the proper time. That's 1 Peter 5:6. After all, he has told you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. That's Micah 6:8. The key is never to contest God's wisdom, but instead to accept humbly whatever God brings into your life as coming from his hand. The mighty hand of God is an Old Testament symbol of God's controlling power. The humble person realizes that God is in charge, always accomplishing his sovereign purpose. That realization, however, should not go so far as to produce the fatalistic attitude of crying uncle to God. Like God, you're too strong for me to contend with. No use battering my head against the walls of the universe. For over 800 years, perhaps no one has portrayed that attitude more retchingly than Omar Khayyam in the Rubaiyat. Rubaiyat.
Maybe. I don't know.
Rubaiyat. In case you haven't figured it out, we don't know what it says. Rubaiyat. Is it a book?
Pronounce.
Look up Omar Khayyam, the Rubaiyat.
Omar Khayyam.
Rubaiyat is how you say the book. I'm guessing it's a book. Looks like a book.
Okay.
A very old book.
In the Rubaiyat, Omar Khayyam says, but helpless pieces of the game he played upon his checkerboard of nights and days, hither and thither moves, and checks and slays, and one by one back in the closet lays. The ball no question makes of A's and no's. What? But here and there as strikes the player goes. And he that tossed you down into the field, he knows about it all. He knows. The moving finger writes, and having writ, moves on, nor all your pity nor wit shall lure in back to cancel half a line, nor all your tears wash out a word of it.
I don't understand.
Me either. I don't have enough background of that book, I don't think, to... You guys get the reference to that book and why he referenced it? Leave it down below. We're interested to know. We don't know. So we're going to move on. Yes, God is all-powerful. Contrary to the fanciful characters of some science fiction shows, he is the only omnipotent being. He is capable of doing all Khayyam wrote about and more. But the balancing factor is that God cares about us. We will soon explore that truth in more detail. In Scripture, the mighty hand of God's power means different things at different times. Sometimes it speaks of deliverance, as in the exodus of Israel from Egypt. That's Exodus 3:20. Sometimes it serves as a shield to protect the believer through a time of testing. Sometimes it is a chastening hand. Let's look at a specific example from the book of Job. In the midst of terrible suffering, Job tragically compounded his anguish by doing what he should have learned never to do. He contested God's wisdom, expressingly resenting what the mighty hand of God had brought him. Take time to sense the raw human emotion seething under the words of his lament. I cry out to you, O God, but you do not answer me. I stand up, but you merely look at me. You turn on me ruthlessly. With the might of your hand, you attack me. You snatch me up and drive me before the wind. You toss me about in the storm. I know you will bring me down to death. And that is chapter 30, verses 20 through 23. Perhaps Job was feeling like one of Khayyam's chess pieces. Here the mighty hand of God, maybe it's about like how, the person playing the game has full control over where the chess pieces go. And the chess pieces don't get a say about it. Maybe. I don't know. Just a thought. Okay. Perhaps Job was feeling like one of Khayyam's chess pieces. Here, the mighty hand of God is not the hand of deliverance, but of testing, acting like the refiner's fire to make Job's faith come out like gold. Contrary to Job's gloomy expectations, that's exactly what happened. Once God had humbled him, Job confessed, "Surely I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know. My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes." And that is in chapter 42, verses 3 and 5 through 6. Job was saying, God, now I see you like never before. I have learned that my perceptions are seriously limited, but now I know I can trust you implicitly. Job's example is recorded for us so that we can learn the same lesson without having to go through the same struggle. Paul said, "Whatever was written in earlier times was written for our instruction, that through perseverance and the encouragement of scriptures we might have hope." And that's in Romans 15:4. Never view the mighty hand of God in your life as a slap in the face, but as a grounds for hope. Realize he has only good intentions towards you and as his child, and therefore expect to see good results from your present circumstances. Such an attitude leaves no steam for worry to operate on. Peter said, "When you humble yourself under God's mighty hand, he may exalt you at the proper time." 1 Peter 5:6. What's the proper time? His time, not our time. When will it be? When he has accomplished his purpose. Now, that might seem a little vague, but there's no cause for concern. God has perfect timing. Indeed, our salvation depended on his perfect timing. Paul specified that the hope of eternal life was at the proper time manifested through Jesus Christ in Titus 1, 2, and 3. Trusting in God's timing is no light or peripheral matter to the Christian faith. At the proper time, God will exalt us. Paul used a Greek term that speaks of lifting us out of our present trouble. For the Christian, even the worst trial is only temporary. Remember that, for you will be tempted to conclude that because there's no end in sight, there is no end at all. Do not believe it for a minute. God promises to lift you out. Oh, I see. Like not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah, okay. How are we to conduct ourselves until the promised time of deliverance? Peter said, "Humble yourselves, casting all your anxiety upon him because he cares for you." And that is 1 Peter 5:6-7.
Learn to trust. Humility requires strong confidence in a caring God. I can't humble myself under God's pressure if I don't think he cares, but I can if I know he does. Peter said to have an attitude of trust. The basis of that truth is
I'm yawning.
is the loving care God has repeatedly shown us. You can cast your anxiety on him and you're able to say, however haltingly, "Lord, it's difficult. I'm having trouble handling this trial, but I'm giving you the whole deal because I know you care for me." The word translated casting was used to describe throwing something on something else, such as a blanket over a pack animal. Take all your anxiety, all the discontent, discouragement, despair, questioning, pain, and suffering that you're going through, and toss it all onto God. Trade it in for trust in God, who really cares about you. Hannah is a great illustration of someone who did just that. She didn't have any children, which was a significant trial for a Jewish woman in ancient times. The book of 1 Samuel tells us what she did about her problem. She, greatly distressed, prayed to the Lord and wept bitterly, and she made a vow and said, "O Lord of hosts, if thou wilt indeed look on the affliction of thy maidservant, and remember me, and not forget thy maidservant, but wilt give thy maidservant a son, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life." Now it came about as she continued praying before the Lord that Eli the priest was watching her mouth. As for Hannah, she was speaking in her heart, only her lips were moving, but her voice was not heard. So Eli thought she was drunk. When Eli said to her, "How long will you make yourself drunk? Put away your wine from you." But Hannah answered and said, "No, my Lord, I am a woman oppressed in spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have poured out my soul before the Lord. Do not consider your maidservant as a worthless woman, for I have spoken until now out of my great concern and provocation." Then Eli answered and said, "Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant your petition that you have asked of him." And she said, "Let your maidservant find favor in your sight." So the woman went her way and ate, and her face was no longer sad. Chapter 1, verses 10-18. What happened to her? Why was she no longer sad? Her circumstances hadn't changed, but she changed when she cast her care on the Lord. Soon thereafter, God blessed her with a son, Samuel, who grew to be a great man of God. God also gave her 3 other sons and 2 daughters. Hannah is proof when you remain humble under the mighty hand of God, giving him all your anxiety on his loving care, he will exalt you in due time. There's no doubt in my mind that Peter had Psalm Psalm 55:22 in mind when he wrote his first epistle. Cast your burden upon the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never allow the righteous to be shaken. Now that doesn't mean we won't feel shaky at times. Think how Hannah felt when the priest accused her of being drunk. Sometimes when we're bearing burdens that in themselves seem too great to bear, people treat us insensitively and heap more burdens on us. But like Hannah, we can be gracious about it and find relief through prayer to the God who does care. If you need to be reminded now and then that God really cares about you, remember what Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount. Since he luxuriously arrays mere field lilies, don't you think he will clothe you? Since he faithfully feeds mere birds, don't you think he will feed you? Spiritual maturity begins with these fundamentals: an attitude of humility toward God and others, and trust in God's care. What will that attitude of trust look like when dealing with fear and anxiety? We go again to J. Adams for more practical advice. Stop trying to stop fearing or worrying. Say to God in your own words, and mean it, something like this: Lord, if I have another bout with fear or worry, I'll just have to have it. I'm going to leave that in your hands. That is something of what Peter meant when he wrote, casting all of your care upon him, for he cares for you. 1 Peter 5:7. Then make your plans and do whatever God holds you responsible for doing. Fill your mind with concern for the other persons towards whom you are expressing love, and how you will do so in whatever you are doing. A prayer found in a small devotional manual that first appeared in Europe over 500 years ago prepares us to follow through with that advice. The manual is attributed to Thomas A. Kempis and is titled The Imitation of Christ. O Lord, greater is thy anxiety for me, Matthew 6:30, John 6:20, than all the cares that I can take for myself. For he standeth but very totteringly, who casteth not all his anxiety upon thee. 1 Peter 5:7. O Lord, if only my will may remain right and firm towards thee, do with me whatsoever it shall please thee. For it cannot be anything but good whatsoever thou shalt do with me. If thou willest me to be in darkness, be thou blessed, and if thou willest me to be in light, be thou again blessed. If thou vouchsafe to comfort me, be thou blessed, and if thou willest me to be afflicted, be thou ever equally blessed. That was a mouthful.
It's weird when things are written.
That
like
was
that.
Willist. I think that's why a lot of people think the Bible's hard to understand, is because
it's written for. It was written in a different time.
Yeah.
And people spoke differently. Yeah.
Why did thouest write it that it like it that it?
Like that. We have to trust that he's going to take care of us, which kind of starts with us humbling ourselves to the realization that we need him to take care of us. A lot of humbling and trusting. We need to work on those two things. Being humble and having trust. Both two difficult things to work on.
Yeah.
There was a certain thing that I said.
Was thereist?
There was a thingist. That stuck out to me. It was something that you read, so it had to be. It was this. I found it. I always like to point out, because different things can stand out to different people, so I always just like to share with you guys what things, kind of, what do you say, clicked in your mind, or, resonated with you.
Something flipped her switch.
It flippeth my switcheth. It was here where it was talking about Job. And it says that Job was saying, God, now I see you like never before. I have learned that my perceptions are seriously limited. And I was like, how often when we're going through struggles, are our perceptions limited to the circumstances that are directly around us? And we become so focused on just that, and we can't see anything else that's going on. We're just so consumed with that one thing. And no, we'll never really have a way of thinking like God does, and we'll never understand that. But I probably need to work on seeing things as a bigger perspective, and on my life for God as a whole. Kind of like it said in the last thing, the thing that Mariah read from the Imitation of Christ, if thou wast will me to be in darkness, then I will be blessed. And if thou will me to be in the light, then again I'll be blessed.
If thou willest.
Whatever God decides to do with our lives, we should still consider ourselves blessed through that. Although that is a difficult perspective to take. I need to work on that.
So if that is all
Stop it!
for this video, we hope you enjoyed
You're
it.
almost like, no, it sounds like you're trying to speak Pig Latin or something.
Okay, guys, so that is all for this chapter.
Chapter 3.
Next week we will start chapter 4, and it is called Living a Life of Faith and Trust. Like we said, lots of trust.
Goals.
We also post videos every Monday and Friday. Mondays are Bible studies, and Fridays are fun videos. You never know what you're gonna get. You might get food, you might get fashion, you might get makeup, you might get a DIY.
But
Who
it's
knows?
gonna be fun. Don't do it.
So if you enjoyeth our content, be sure to like it and subscribe it.
And hitteth the bell.
Oh, goodness.
We hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful day, and we hope to see you guys in the next one.
Bye.
If.